So I set off to Cambodia in 2018 to be a humanitarian, and I spent a year and a half there building schools, fundraising, and teaching. And I'd wanted to do something like that for years, but I never found any opportunities that popped up. And then by the time I'd graduated from uni, it felt too late because I just felt straight into a grad job and the whole 9 to 5 lifestyle. But that office life in the city never felt right. I still remember the moment that hit me. It was a Wednesday, and it was the first week on the job. And I got home, I turned on the TV, and one of the big Aussie broadcasters, it was playing an ad celebrating Hump Day, and I guess it was to remind everyone that there were only 2 more days until the weekend. And I sat there thinking, is this really what the rest of my life is meant to be? I'm supposed to celebrate Wednesdays because the week is nearly over. And the whole thing just ended up feeling empty. And I didn't last that long in that role. I left within the first year, and then I finally took that humanitarian trip that I'd always wanted to take. And so on this humanitarian trip, the first part was in a rural Thai village for a month where I did animal conservation and I was teaching English. And then I spent the next month backpacking through Vietnam. And when I got back to Sydney, it was the first time I felt alive in a long time, because I just spent the last year in this office job, just with all this anxiety and misalignment, working in the job that I thought I'd wanted at the time. And this trip gave me hope about my future again for the first time in a long time. Because for a while, I genuinely thought that I was doomed to be miserable forever. But when I returned to Sydney, I thought maybe I should give the 9 to 5 one more chance, just in a different industry, maybe. Because maybe I thought maybe it wasn't the work itself that I hated, maybe it was just finance. So I applied for this supply chain role at this Google inspired e commerce company in the city. And I still remember the day of the interview. I sat in a cafe nearby the office, drinking a coffee before I headed into the interview. And as I got up to leave, I read an article on my phone about Donald Trump ordering strikes on Syria. And this was back in 2017. And as I walked toward the building to the interview, there was some guy in a suit that strode past me, like talking numbers on his phone, and then it suddenly hit me again, like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to spend my life in this sheltered world arguing about figures while there are people out there suffering. I wanted to be helping people solve those real world problems that actually matter in the grand scheme of things. But despite that feeling, I went into the interview and I was offered the job that afternoon. But the entire time I worked there, all I could think about was being overseas, doing some form of humanitarian work. It was the only thing on my mind. Like every lunch break, I'd take my journal to a cafe and write out these imaginary plans about living in rural Asia or Africa, doing some sort of meaningful hands-on work. One morning, I remember walking through the tunnel from the train station to the office, and there were thousands of people in suits, all moving in the same direction towards the city. And I remember the only sound that I could hear was the synchronized stomping of shoes, like a quiet march. And this at the time, felt like a line of people trudging toward their trenches. I thought there has to be more to life than this. Like, sure, many people thrive in this 9 to 5 office world. Many live great lives that way, but I couldn't find any beauty in it. And eventually I ended up leaving that role too. This time thanks to redundancy. And the strangest thing was that the sense of relief that washed over me, like the relief that I no longer had to show up to this job that in reality it was pretty good job, like a beautiful office, free food, ping pong tables, young staff, great music, endless inspiring keynote talks. But that relief, it was relief that I didn't have to pretend anymore that I cared about any of it, because I didn't. And that afternoon, right after the redundancy meeting, I remember making the decision, I'm going overseas. And that's kind of how it all started back in 2017. And then about 9 months after that, I'd end up moving to Cambodia for a year and a half.